Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Now, in this session, we will be discussing scope of social policy. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the scope of social policy varies from country to country. This happens due to in various country government subscribes to different type of ideology. In this world our life is shaped by many ideologies. Now, out of those ideologies, the most important ideologies which shape our life are capitalism, communism and socialism. These ideologies shape our life in this planet, okay? And accordingly these ideologies also shape the policies taken by state in a particular country. So before we look into the scope of social policy, actually we should have some understanding about these major theories, namely the theories of capitalism, theories of socialism and theories of communism. Now, so first we will try to acquaint ourselves or recapitulate these what are the main points of these ideologies, and then we would show how different theoretical position follows from these ideologies and which defines the scope of social policy in a particular country. Now, here we should keep in mind that when we talk about scope of social policy, obviously one would say that scope of social policy has to be different in different countries because the countries have different social problems. Yes, countries have different social problems, but how a particular state will look at that particular problem and how a particular state will analyze the cause of that problem and how a particular state will formulate policy to tackle that problem or to promote social development in that country, that depends on the theoretical position or theoretical understanding that has been accepted or agreed upon by a particular state at a particular point of time. So, what I mean to say, the type of policy that is enacted by a particular state at a particular point of time follows from a theoretical understanding or major theories or theoretical position that a particular state takes. So that is why it is important for us to understand what are the major theories that shape policies of a country, and then that would tell us what type of scope social policies will have in a particular country at a particular point of time. And here we would also like to keep in mind that it is not that ideological position that a particular country takes will remain static throughout. These ideologies or subscription to a particular ideology may keep on changing over a period of time. So, accordingly policies of the state also would change, like a country may be more socialistic, okay, then when a country subscribe to a socialistic ideology, then that country will take one type of policy and one type of solution they will think of, but when that country, the same country may subscribe to more capitalistic type of orientation, then that country will change or take a different type of policy, which we will also see later in our discussion. So, for understanding this, for having an understanding of scope of social policy, what we should have a basic understanding or of the major theories. Okay. Now, one major theory, as I said, is capitalism. Okay. Now, capitalism, what is capitalism? Capitalism, we are just making, I am making some important points of capitalism. Capitalism refers to individualism or laissez-faire. Laissez-faire, it means that every individual should have freedom to do whatever they want to do. Now, so it is based on, capitalism is based on, individual is the main essence of capitalism. That means it says that every individual should have absolute freedom of what they want to do, whatever economic activity an individual wants to carry out. Now, one important point of capitalism is that private property is a natural right of man. It assumes, it says, first assumption of capitalism is that every individual should have a right to private property, and that is a natural right. That means one cannot curb the right to private property. That is one first essence of capitalism. The right to private property is the main thing. Okay. Now, then after assuming that private property is a fundamental right of every individual, then it says that individual knows best his own interest and how to pursue it. Then it says that every individuals are selfish human being. Every individual they work to pursue their self interest. Okay. And it assumes that the individual knows what is best in their interest. Okay. And how to pursue it. That means, first of all, every individual will have a right to private property, and secondly, that every individual knows what type of activity is in his best interest and how to pursue that. Okay. And what is very important assumption in capitalism is that in pursuing his own interest, individual also serves the common interest. This is very interesting. Now, in other words, what capitalism says, that let every individual pursue their self interest, because it assumes that every individual knows what is best in his own interest, because they try to promote the self interest. Okay. And after that, it says that let every individual pursue their own self interest. And when every individual tries to pursue their self interest, what happens? What happens that when every individual they work to pursue their own interest, ultimately common interest is served. That means society would progress. Every individual, when selfish individuals, when they work in their own interest, and in that process what happens, there will be something called survival of the fittest. Some individual will be able to pursue their own interest better than others, etc., etc. There will be competition among the individual to pursue their self interest, and in that process the society will prosper, and in this prosperity will serve the common interest, or the society would pursue through this process. Assumption of capitalism is that only when each individual is allowed to pursue their own interest, the society prospers, and that would benefit that serves the common interest. Okay, this is what is the assumption of capitalism. Okay, now what it follows from this, and this has an implication for social policy. Like what it follows, it says that government should not interfere in economic affairs. As it says that an individual should be permitted to pursue their interest, so let them pursue their own interest. So if we want to help or if state allows every individual to pursue their own interest, that means government should not intervene. Government should not interfere particularly in their economic affairs. That means every individual should be able to pursue their own economic interest, and so government will not play any role here. You see how it has implication for social policy. That means what follows, that government should not do more or should not do anything or do very little in formulating social policy, because when you pursue if you allow individuals to pursue their own interest and government should not interfere in economic affairs, then only what happens, the prosperity happens in the society. Now of course that does not mean that government will not intervene at all. It says that government should intervene to establish free trade in foreign commerce and to promote competition. It says that what will be the role of the government? Role of the government is to help individual to pursue their own interest. So how government will help individuals to pursue their own economic interest is to establish free trade. There should be no bar in having a free trade and free trade with foreign commerce, etc. And there should be competition. There should be government should try to promote competition among the individuals, among the various business organizations. They should compete and there should be free trade. Their government should not try to protect business organization of a particular country from foreign business person or business organization, because that would hamper. So ultimately let everybody pursue their own interest. Government should try to promote that and there should be free trade. Government should not play any role here. So in this process only prosperity will come. Then it also says that free competition in the pursuit of wealth is the only way of conserving the effects of natural selection and survival of the fittest. What it says that when there is a free competition with everybody, when there is no government intervention and when there is a free competition, what happens? The survival of fittest happens. That means when each individual compete with each other to promote their personal interests, economic interests, what happens in this competition? Those who are more efficient, they would survive, they would prosper, and those who are inefficient or those who are not that efficient, they will perish. So in this process what will happen? Survival of the fittest happens, and it says and it argues that this survival, the most fit person would become most prosperous person in the country or in the world. So and it says this selection procedure is is proper, because if someone is rich, that person is rich because he or she is the most fitted person. If someone is poor, that means that person is not that efficient. That is why he is poor. So the fittest person would survive, and survival of the fittest would happen, and that will be in the interest of the society. And it says that those who benefit from a competitive pursuit of economic gain are more numerous than those who suffer. Those who benefit from a competitive pursuit of economic gain are more numerous than those who suffer. Or in other words, what it says, that in this process some will survive, some will not survive, some would perish. Now, now those who will adversely get affected in this process, their number is few, and those who would gain, they are more in number. It says that if we allow, in other words, it says if we allow every individual to pursue their self interest, what happens, every individual will try his best to promote his economic interest, and they will compete with each other, and in this competition what will happen, that the person who is most efficient, he will survive, and those who are not that efficient, they will perish, and ultimately there will be, through this process there will be prosperity, and it says that majority would benefit from this process, majority would benefit. That is why it says that individualism, or giving right to private property, and promoting competition among individuals is at the best, in the best interest of the society. This is what is what capitalism says. Okay. Now you see how what is the implication. This has some implication from social policy, and it says that so government should not come in the way. Okay, that means government will have a minimum role in framing a social policy. Okay. Anyway, we will elaborate this later. We will see how from this ideology the scope of social policy follows. Okay. Now, after capitalism, apart from capitalism, the another important ideology which is very prominent ideology is which is opposite to capitalist ideology, is the ideology of communism. Okay. Now, we will also look at the ideology of communism. Like in this world, many countries or many states, they follow predominantly a capitalist ideology. Similarly, there are some countries in the world, which follows more or less some form of communist ideology. Hence, we should look into this ideology. Okay. Now, first thing it says that mode of production in material life determines the general character of social, political, and spiritual process of life. What it says, communism, first thing it says that mode of production is very important. Mode of production is the base of a society. If we want to understand a society, we will have to look at the mode of production, which is the base. Okay, and depending on this base, the superstructure or other type of organization in a society, like say education system, religion, political system, all these, what will be the nature of all these superstructure will depend on this base. That means mode of production is the main thing or essence or the base of a society, which influences or which shapes other infrastructure or other superstructure, like nature of state, nature of education system, nature of religion, etc., etc. So, spiritual life, etc., political life, all these are influenced by the mode of production. Okay. Then it says something very interesting. It says, since the establishment of private property, the society has been divided into two hostile economic classes. Okay. It says actually the society has been, ever since the private property has been established, society has been divided into two hostile economic classes. Okay, I think let me go back in the history to explain, how this happened. How Karl Marx or his followers, they explain this, that how society has been divided into two hostile economic classes. Okay, you know, as you know, our ancestors many years ago, they used to live in forest. Okay, and that time human being is to live in the caves, and there was a group life. At one stage of the development of human civilization, what used to happen, human beings used to live in caves and they used to live in forest. Now at that point of time, you know, there is no idea of private property. The entire world belonged to everybody. Okay, now how they used to survive, they used to live in they used to lead a group life, and they used to hunt, or they used to collect berries, fruits, etc. from the forest, and they used to distribute that among themselves. So they used to hunting and food gathering. Through this they used to survive. Okay, now this way they used to live at one stage of the evolution of human civilization. Now what happened when they were doing that, someone discovered that when after eating a fruit, say for instance after eating a mango, when he had thrown the seed of that mango somewhere, a plant started growing, a mango plant started growing from that seed. So then he realized that plant grows from the seeds. So then some individual thought of doing some experiment. So what he did, he cleared a part of the forest and he thrown some seeds of some fruits that they used to eat there. He discovered that after some time, some trees bearing fruits started growing there, you know. So when and then he realized that actually usually they go to a far up place for collecting fruits. Now if the fruits can be grown somewhere near the forest, it will be convenient for them. So then, you know, he started clearing some part of the forest, and he started growing some trees, some fruit bearing or edible plants in that area, and those things started growing. When that happened, what happened, you know, sometimes some cattle is to destroy those fruits, you know, or they destroy those edible plants. Okay, or sometime so then he thought of putting a fence around that place, the place which he has cleared. He thought of putting a fence around that place. Okay, and that was very important moment in the history of evolution of property, in a private property. What happened when he has put a fence around a piece of land where he was growing some fruits, some edible plants, and when someone else was trying to pluck some fruits or something which is grown in that piece of land, he said, no, it belongs to me, you know, I have planted these plants. And so earlier human being is to live in a group. Now a sense of I and you, I and others started emerging. He said, this land belongs to me. So sense of private property started emerging. Okay, so in this way what happens, the private property started emerging. Okay, the you know, and the Pandora's box started opening up, and so if that person started claiming that this piece of land belongs to him, and whatever is grown in that piece of land which he has fenced, whatever is produced there, that belong to him, not to the group, not to the others. Okay, so now the sense of private property emerged. And then he thought that if he can grow some plants, why should he live with a group? So he thought that I can live alone or live outside the group. So he came out from the group and he started, he said, then in that case, whatever I grow, I can eat that, and so there is no need of my being in that group. So he started growing those plants and he started living separately. After some time, he thought earlier there is a group marriage, or now he asked one of the some women to live with him, and then he said that this is my wife, and then he said this is my child, etc., etc. So this way what happened, private property and family became separated from group life to this type of family started taking shape. And what is most important, what happened in this process, after some time he realized that it is very difficult for him to give labor to produce the crops in the piece of land alone, So then he then asks some other members of the group that can you work with me in this piece of land, then whatever will be produced I will give you a part of it, So now see what happens, that a person became the owner of the land, and another person whom he in a way engaged, who started working for him, So two classes started emerging, that some person started owning a piece of land, and then he could get some other individual to work in his land, and he started enjoying the fruits of the labor of that other individual. The other individual started working for him because he somehow he could not own a piece of land, or so he started working in somebody else's land, and as a result of that he was getting something in return to eat, etc., etc., but he did not own that land. So society became divided in two classes. One class is the owner. This way some other individuals also started doing. So what happened, society became divided into two classes. One is the owner of landowners, another class is those who work for the landowners. Okay. Now in this process what happens, some sort of exploitation started happening. Those who were owning the land, they started taking the advantage of the labor of others, and enjoying the fruits of the labor of others without giving that much of labor which they used to give earlier. Okay. So this way because of that society became divided into two hostile economic classes. After some time, those who worked for the landowners, they realized that actually they are getting exploited. So they became slightly hostile to the landowners, but they could not do much. They were working for the landowners, but this is how two hostile economic classes emerged. Okay. Thus society became divided into class. Now why I mentioned that the two hostile economic classes emerged. Now the question is why this hostility? The primary reason for this antagonism is that the capitalist class, through its ownership of means of production, is able to appropriate the surplus value created by labor. As I was telling, that what started happening, the class which own the land or own the capital, they started misappropriating the labor or appropriating the labor created by others. Okay. And this happened through a process of surplus value. it is important to know this concept of surplus value. Okay, that will enable us to understand why there is hostility between two classes. Okay, now let me explain briefly. The narration that I gave, it is a there is some sort of imaginary narration, but this narration actually through this narration I was trying to present what happened, how private property emerged. Okay, now I will try to explain this notion of surplus value, that what happened, the surplus value was created by laborers, but this surplus value was misappropriated by the capitalist class. Now I will explain how that happened. Like for instance, supposing this pen, okay. Now I would like to say, supposing I would like to produce this pen, okay. Now if I want to produce this pen, what I require, firstly, I would need some capital. I need some capital to set up a factory. So for that, when I have to give some interest, that capital that I take as a loan from bank or some other sources or whatever sources, I have to give some interest. Okay. Then for supposing I am paying 1 rupee as interest for this capital that I have borrowed. Okay. Now I would need some raw material, like say some plastic or some other metal for producing this pen. Now supposing this raw material, for that I am paying another 1 rupee. Okay. So 2 rupees I have spent for paying for producing one pen. Okay. Now then I have to employ some managers or some other employees, etc., who will for running this factory. For that also I have to pay say 1 rupee per pen. Okay. So I have spent 3 rupees. Okay. Now I will have to employ some laborers, those laborers who will transform these raw materials into this pen. Okay. So for the laborers, says I have paid another 1 rupee to the laborers. Okay. So what I have done, I have spent 4 rupees. Okay. I have produced this pen, and I have for producing this pen I have to spend 4 rupees. Okay. Now when I sell this pen in the market, I get 10 rupees. Say for instance I get 10 rupees. Okay. So that means I have spent 4 rupees. I have spent 4 rupees for producing one pen, but when I sell it in the market, I can get easily 10 rupees for this pen. So the 6 rupees extra I am getting. Okay. Now the question is, who created this 6 rupees? According to this Marxist ideology, this 6 rupees is the contribution of the laborer. I have paid only 1 rupee to the laborer, but the Marxist ideologies, their argument is that that raw material or whatever I have bought, it is the laborers who have transformed this into a pen, and that is why I am getting 10 rupees, so 6 rupees extra. So this 6 rupees should go to the laborer. This is what the surplus value. Okay. But in a capitalist society, what happens, this 6 rupees is within quote misappropriated by the capitalist class. The capitalist class, because he owns the property, he owns the means of production, the 6 rupees goes to him, and that is how he became rich and laborers remain poor. So this happens through this misappropriation of the surplus value, and that is why there is an antagonism. There is an antagonism between among the laborer class, between the laborer class and the capitalist class. Okay. So this is what is the theory of surplus value. Okay. And why capitalist system? Now what is the argument of the capitalism? Argument of the capitalist system is that actually these 6 rupees go to the capitalist to the owner of the means of production, because it is the owner of means of production, because he has taken the initiative. Because of that, this pen is being produced, and that is why this initiative, this is entrepreneurial initiative, is important. So he should be rewarded, he should get it. But according to the Marxist ideology, no, actually it is the contribution of the laborer, so they should get it. Okay, so this is the difference between these two theoretical standpoints, and what is important, because according to the Marxists, because the surplus value is created by the laborer class, but misappropriated by the owners of means of production, there is an antagonism, and that is why capitalist society that is why actually capitalism is wrong. The capitalist system is unjust, and then they say certain things. There's other things which has been stated in capitalist theory, in communist theory, or in the Marxist theory. It says that a social revolution is inevitable because of the concentration of capital in fewer hands and proliferation of the proletariats, who will at its climax overthrow the capitalist class, and a dictatorship of the proletariat will follow, resulting the highest intensification of the state. So what the communist ideology argued, that actually because of this antagonism, what will happen ultimately, there will be a revolution. How the revolution would happen, that there will be there will be concentration of power, concentration of economic prosperity in the fewer and fewer hands, on the one hand, and on the other hand there will be proliferation of the proletariat, so there will be numerous laborers, numerous proletariat on the one hand, and there will be concentration of economic power, monopolistic tendency, and there will be concentration of economic power in the fewer and fewer hand. Successful capitalists will expand their business, and they will become richer and richer, and more people will in the process will become marginalized or poorer. So at one stage of at one point of time, there will be few capitalists and numerous proletariat, and hence and this, when this numerous proletariat, they become organized, they will overthrow and they will take over the state power, take over, and ultimately, and the state will wither away. How state will wither away? The Marxist Marxist argument is that state is there to protect the interest of the capitalist class. Now, once the proletariat come into power, they will acquire all the property that was owned by the capitalist class, and it will belong to everybody, it belong to the state, belong to the society, and everybody would benefit from that property. Hence, there will not be so state, slowly state will wither away, and in the new society, each man will contribute to the social wealth by his labor as much as he can, and will take from it what he needs. Okay, this is what, but this has never happened. Capitalism started declining before all this, but this was the capitalist ideology. This is the capitalist ideology. It is sorry. This is the communist ideology, and actually it is important for us to know this ideology. That will help us to understand the scope of social policy. If we know about this ideology of capitalism, ideology of communism, this will help us to understand how scope of social policy varies from country to country depending on the type of ideology they subscribe to. Okay. Now, let us go to this. As I said, apart from capitalism and communism, there is another important ideology which shape our life in this planet, is the ideology of socialism. Okay. Now, in this ideology of socialism, there are many versions, there are many types of socialism, but among all this, Fabian socialism is most popular, and particularly in our country, we were influenced after independence. We said that we would like to establish a socialist pattern of society, and when we said a socialist pattern of society, we were influenced more by this idea of Fabian socialism. Okay, that's why I am just discussing the Fabian socialism. Now, Fabian socialism is based on the Ricardian theory. This we have to keep in mind. It says the rent of a given piece of land is in general the equivalent of its superior advantages in site, fertility or resources over the worst available land. In other words, what it says, that supposing there is a piece of land in the downtown of a city, okay, and there is another piece of land in nearby villages of that city, okay, or some backward region of that particular city, okay. Now, price of land will, or price of property in these two locations will be different. In the downtown or in the most advanced region of the city, property or land will have very high price, okay. Whereas a land which belongs to a backward region will be priced much less, okay. Now, why that happens? The same piece of land, supposing 1 acre of land in the downtown and 1 acre of land in the nearby village, price will be very different. Now, why this happened? Ricardian, according to Ricardian theory, it is due to the type of advantages that you have in the advanced area or in the downtown. Supposing in the downtown, when you have a piece of 1 acre of land, that area has lot of advantages. Maybe there are that area is connected with road network, that area has good transportation facility, you get very good drinking water, etc., etc. Whereas if you go to another region which is very backward, say in a nearby village, where there may not be good communication, there may not be drinking water available, etc., etc., or other amenities not available. So, it is because of those amenities, the same piece of land would price much less, okay. This is what is the Ricardian theory of how price of land or property or capital varies, okay. Okay, now based on this theory, Fabian socialists say value is the creation of society rather than of laborers, okay. Now, it says that value, that if I own 1 acre of land in a downtown or in the very advanced area or in the heart of the city, I will be very rich, okay. Now, Fabian socialist says that this is because the value that extra value, the extra earning that I will be getting from the property that I own in a good location, that is because that has been created by society, because the road network or other electricity or water facility or whatever that is there in that particular location, it is because of that I am getting higher rent from that land. So, I do not have any credit for that. That has been created by the society at large, by the community at large or the state at large, and that is why I am getting more income, So, so it says that actually when I own a property or when I own a means of production, it is not that is the contribution of the laborer. It is not that as the Marxist say that the capitalist class become richer because they misappropriate the surplus value created by the labor. But Fabian socialist says no, capitalist class become richer because the type of value that is created by the society at large in terms of, as I said, other infrastructure, whatever that has been created in a location which is located in a advanced area, that value has been created by the state or by the society or by the community. Okay. Under the unregulated competitive system, a capitalist retains the superior yield of his capital, which is due not to his superior ability but the location of his business. Now if I own a piece of land, say 1 acre of land, say in the downtown or in the very advanced area or in the heart of the city, I get huge rent, I become rich. Okay. Now why I become rich? It is not by exploiting laborers. Because I own that capital which is located in a superior location, because of that location I am getting higher income, and this is the contribution of the community. Okay. Now one can argue that he is getting higher rent, higher income from the property that he owns in a good location, but he has invested, he has bought that place. Okay. But socialism says investment alone confers no valid title to income. It says, someone may have invested in a land which is in the prime location, but that does not mean that he should get the income. This is the basic essence of Fabian socialism. Fabian socialism said that actually, a person or a capitalist is becoming rich because of the contribution of the community, and that is why he is becoming rich. The property that he owns in a prime location, because of that he is getting higher rent, and that is why through that he is becoming rich. But that is not his credit. Maybe he has bought that land, but that does not mean that he should have he should be able to get income out of that land. Okay. He may have inherited that land or whatever may be, but that does not mean that he should get the income from that land. So it says the conflict is not between those who work for wages and those who employ wage workers. It is between the community and those who grow rich through investment. Okay. Now here is the main difference between the communist ideology and the socialist ideology. Now actually what we have just mentioned, that what is the argument of the Marxist? Argument of the Marxist is that actually how someone becomes rich, or why there is a conflict in the society between two classes, because someone who is able to employ wage workers, he becomes rich by exploiting the surplus value that is produced by these wage workers. Okay. So by misappropriating the surplus value, this person is becoming rich, and hence the conflict is between the capitalist class and the wage workers, because wage workers labor or the surplus value created by wage workers is misappropriated by the capitalist class. Okay. That is what is the argument of the Marxist or communist ideology. But whereas socialist would say, no, actually it is not between capitalist class and wage workers, it is between the person who becomes rich because he has invested in a property, and the benefit that he is getting is the benefit which is due to the community. That a capitalist become rich because he is able to invest in a property which gives him higher income, but this higher income is is created or generated by the community. Like if I have a property in a prime location, that property gives me higher income. This higher income comes from not by exploiting the workers. This higher income comes from because of the infrastructure that has been created by the community, by the society, or by the state. State may have created a lot of road network or other type of water facility, electricity facility, etc., which state has created, and because of that I get higher income from that property. So I am becoming rich at the cost of the community. Actually all this should have gone to the community because it has been created by the community, it has been created by the state, it has been created by the infrastructure that has been created by the state, and I get benefit out of it. So the conflict is between the community and the owner who becomes rich because he could invest on that prime property. Okay. Thus the objective of socialism is to obtain for members of the society the values which society creates by gradually transferring land and industrial capital to the community while making the state fully responsive to the community. Okay. What it says actually, so what is the goal of socialism? Goal of socialism is, or objective of socialism is to obtain for its members the values which society is. So it says that if the if the value has been created by the community, it should be transformed to the community. In other words, state should own that property through legislation gradually. Because a person or a capitalist has become rich because he was able to invest to buy a land in a prime location, and because of that, but that prime location has been created by the community, and it is through this creation of the community or the contribution to the community he is becoming rich. So this income should go back to the community. How? State should take over that property, and this income should go to the state or go to the community. If someone owns a coal mine, it says this coal mine is not, the state should take over the coal mine and give it to the and the earnings should go to the community. Or say for instance, we have Land Ceiling Act. Okay. Now actually now we have a ceiling for urban property, we have ceiling for property in the rural area. Now the argument follows mainly from that. Actually, if someone has own a property in the urban area, actually there should be ceiling to that, and state should own the property owned beyond that ceiling, and that land should go back to the state, and the earning from that land should go to the community or go to the state. In other words, socialism says that state should gradually through legislation take over all the property which is owned by capitalist class. Okay, and this property, earning from this property should go to the community or go to the citizen. So that is how what socialism tries to do through legislation. It tries to transform the society, and everything is gradually, all the property is taken over by state, and earning, the main goal is that earning from that property should go to the community, because the community has created that property or that advantages, and that is how the society should be transformed. Okay, this is what is the main argument of socialism. Okay, with this we conclude this session. Thank you.